Hello everyone, thank you for returning back to the channel, and thank you if you're new for coming and checking my channel out for the first time. I hope you enjoy and I hope you get something out of this lesson. Today we're looking at a game from the 2015 Aeroflot Open Tournament, which was won by Ian Nepomniachtchi. As you can see on the screen there, Dubov came in second. In third place is the player with the white pieces, Ivan Bukavshin, who unfortunately passed away in 2016 at the age of 20 years old under mysterious circumstances. I might just do a separate video on that interesting case. With the black pieces, we have popular Grandmaster Richard Rapport from Hungary. And the reason why I chose this game is because the game was a Chigorin defense, which I like to look at occasionally, offbeat opening somewhat. And I like when very strong players pick up these quote-unquote lesser openings, right? Or inferior, second tier, third tier level openings. So let's look at this Chigorin from Richard Rapport. So Bukavshin, white pieces, Rapport black pieces. So the game started off D4, D5. Let me also say, please hit that thumbs up button to help my videos move along in the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe, all that good stuff, and please check the links below for books, DVDs, and to help support my channel via donation. Thank you very much. All right, C4 was played, knight C6. This starts the Chigorin's defense. C takes D5 was played. Queen takes D5. Notice the immediate piece pressure black puts on the center. So E3 is played. Knight F3 can be played also, but E3 is played here. And now E5, putting more pressure on the center and also preparing for the dark squared bishop to come out to B4 and pin the knight on C3. And now A3. Black gives up his bishop pair to maintain his queen on D5. And now knight F6. Older line used to begin with queen D6, saving the tempi against the queen after C4. I think Smyslov played this line, but this line is also adequate, just playing knight F6. And although the queen is hit with the pawn, the idea is basically to allow the pawns to advance and basically slow the pawns down, blockade the position. You have to remember, in the Chigorins, there are many variations where black will part with both bishops and therefore retain the knights. And knights are better in closed positions, where bishops tend to not perform as well in closed positions. So if you're holding on to the knights, you want to make the position as conducive to knight activity as much as possible, and you'll see that in a few moves here. So queen D6, pawn advances D5, knight E7, A4, gaining more space on the queen side, and sometimes preparing to move bishop to A3, annoying the queen. So C5. And now white is faced with the choice. He could take en passant on C6, but then after queen D1, king takes D1, right? Knight C6, black is pretty much equal. All right. So the tension is maintained in the position by bishop B2. Now, I just want to say a few words about the center. And this is what I was talking about. This position as it stands, right, is kind of what black wants for his knights, right? The bishops, you know, are kind of blocked behind these pawns, and black would like to, you know, keep these pawns blockaded, right, long enough to take away all mobility from these pawns, okay? Because the rule basically with the pawns is that when your opponent has, you know, strong center or, you know, queen side majority or anything, one, right, ideal is to just destroy the pawn center, right? If you could, you would just destroy the pawn center. But you can't always outright win or destroy the pawns. Alright? So if you can't do that, the second best thing to do is blockade them and make them immobile and effective. Because if they become immobile, then they just become albatross in the opponent's position. It's just they become a big target. Alright? So you blockade, and then you can attack down the road. So either you want to destroy the center right away, if you can, and if you can't, you want to blockade and cripple the opponent's center from being able to move. Because what makes the center dangerous and what makes pawns dangerous in general is the mobility. If they can move and push up the board, then they're like a tidal wave, and they can move, knock the pieces back, etc., etc. If they're frozen, then they become ineffective and become a burden in position. So this is the concept that the battle is going to revolve around for the next several moves. All right, black trying to immobilize the white pawns, and white trying to become mobile. So let's see what happens. So bishop b2, castles from black, and now knight f3, and you can see the attack on the pawn here. That's why knight g6 is played, and now knight d2. This is a critical time in the position already. All right, because what white wants to do, like I said, he wants to mobilize his pieces. Of course, he wants to finish his development. All right. So why does he play knight d2? Okay, he wants to take over the e4 square. All right. Black wants to play e4 himself. All right, gaining space in the center, and then perhaps even utilize the e5 square for his knight, which may eventually end up on d3. All right. Also, white, if white allows black to gain control of e4 and drive his knight away, this is going to be a big step forward for black in facilitating a kingside attack. All right, you can see the knights are already well placed on f6 and g6. Bishop sitting there on c8. All right, so just imagine with the e4 push, knight getting pushed out the way, and black able to just move his rooks into the center, say on d8 and e8, right, and start attacking on the king side. And this is the vision of Chigorin. Chigorin did not like the passive defenses of the Queen's Gambit Decline and the Slav, where black is forced to make concessions early on and play a defensive game. He wanted his free piece play and activity. And this is why the knight comes out early in Chigorin. c6, bishop comes to g4, bishop comes to b4, right? It's all about piece play and activity. So after knight d2, all right, very important, because black wants to play e4, white wants to take over e4. Now, a lot of rookie players would like to play e4 as white. But you got to remember, you have the two bishops, and you want the position to be conducive to your pieces. So e4 kind of makes that light square bishop worse for a long time. So let me just give you two plans here for white. So let's imagine if white can move a couple of times. Queen c2. Because queen c2 takes over e4, right? Controls e4 without actually putting a pawn on e4. See, because now if black plays e4, he just drops the pawn. All right? Again, giving white an extra move, bishop d3. So you can see how he developed the pieces, took over e4, right? There's some pressure on, indirectly on h7, right? And he gets his pieces out, and he prepares the castle. Okay? So now that e4 is dominated, let's give white some more moves. Let's say castle, right? a4. So this is plan one. The first plan that I highlighted is basically bishop c3, rook to a2, rook to b1, and then the rook on f1. I'm sorry, rook to b2, and then the rook on f1 to b1 with the pressure up the b file. Okay, that's plan one. Other plan is bringing the queen to c3, right? Making a bishop and queen battery, okay, threatening mate, right, in some far distant future, putting more pressure on e5, of course, and preparing to play the move f4 and knight e4. Okay, opening up the position for the bishops. This is more of aggressive plan by white. Okay, opening up the position for the bishops, destroying black's central pawn on e5. And now you can see how the bishop on b2 and the bishop on d3 would be opened up. Then knight e4 threatens the knight on f6, right, to destroy the black king cover. So it's a dangerous plan for white. Now that you saw these two ideas from white and how important the control over e4 is, then you'll understand better Richard Rapport's next move. So after this move, knight d2, Richard Rapport sacrifices the pawn. Okay, so before white can get going, black plays e4 right away. How is black sacrificing a pawn? Well, after bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, there it is, knight takes e5. All right, so what does black have in return for the pawn? Well, as you can see, black has a lead in development. All right, he's provoked white into relinquishing the bishop pair, and in this case he's relinquished his good bishop because the other bishop is not even out yet, and most of the pawns are on light squares. Okay, so that bishop is not even that good. So black's plan is to utilize his activity to harass to harass white, and before white can consolidate the position. Because statically, white has a good position. He already has a passed pawn in the d file, and it's protected. All right. So basically, if white can consolidate, he's gonna have a better game, right? He is already up a pawn, and he's attacking the c pawn on c5, as you can see, right? And so he just basically needs to, say play bishop d3, castle, all right, and he's practically winning. All right. However, black gets the move, and he plays queen e5, so it's important for black to have an initiative. So queen e5 hitting the knight. All right. The knight drops back to d2. Okay. If white gets greedy here and plays this move, knight c5, then just queen c3 check, and it's super awkward for white here. He can't really play queen d2 because the rook's gonna fall. That forces king to e3. Okay, and again, just the harassment is gonna continue here, and already white has to be very careful in this situation already, and then he's gonna lose the knight. You see, so there's a lot of tactics due to the piece activity, and that was just a sample right there. So now we're going to get back into the game. So this is why knight c5 is not played by white here. Instead, knight d2 is played. All right, more tactics. Remember, black has to keep the initiative, right, for to compensate for black's for white's static advantages. He plays bishop g4. So I have all of these arrows highlighted to just, again, show you some tactics in the position. So again, the queen on d1 can't really capture the bishop on g4 because the rook on a1 will be captured by the queen. f3 is also out of the picture because of queen takes e3. If knight f3, queen c3, king e2, knight f4 check. Again, the activity of the pieces, and this is checkmate. Right? activity of black. So you can see what it's about here. A queen c1, then just rook e8 with the idea of f5, and black has, again, excellent compensation for the pawn. So you can see this is all about suppressing white and not letting him consolidate. All right. So back to the game. So bishop g4, and this is the option that white settled on. Bishop e2. Bishop takes. King takes. Again, can't take with the queen because rook a1. So king takes e2. So do you think black has compensation for the pawn at this point? I would say yes. All right. Has to play accurately, but definite compensation there. Rook a e8. Again, just bringing all the pieces in, and black definitely wants to play f5, f4, and capture on e3. King f1. And some of you are saying, wait a minute, why doesn't he just bring the rook to e1 and then the king to f1? Well, some of you astute tacticians out there can see that if rook e1, then queen takes h2. All right. Again, giving black more fuel and wood to the fire. Of course, if white could get away with it, it would be good if he could just slip the king to f1 and g1, but he doesn't have time. So king f1 was played. f5, and you can see it's very hard for white to develop and coordinate the pieces, and this is what black is banking on. g3 is played. Again, black's idea, if black could keep moving, he would play f4 here. And say e4, queen d4 with the idea of the knight coming into e5. Black had some extra moves. But g3 is played. f4 anyway. The position must, you can't allow white to consolidate. Period. So very committal variation here. So e takes f4. And what did Richard play here? Richard played knight takes f4. G takes f4. Queen takes f4. Threatening mate. Again, no development from black. Save the knight on d2. Alright. f3. Right? You gotta ward off that mate in one threat. f3. Now here, critical moment. What do you play now? Do you play move like rook f6? I'm sorry, rook f5 or rook f6? Rapport play rook e3. Just put more pressure on the e pawn. Okay. Game continued. Rook to g1. Basically, white understands he has to get the pieces out. He can't try to hold this pawn. You know, for instance, on h2. So he has to get the pieces out. So he plays rook g1. And now queen takes h2. And his idea is to play rook g2. I'm sorry, queen h4 was played afterward. If queen h1, then this is a good move for white. I mean, he's has a double attack, trying to force the trade of queens off here, and he's attacking the rook. Only move now is for black would be a move like queen h6 to keep the pieces on the board. But this gives white time. So queen h4 was played, and now rook b1. Of course, now you can see the purpose of rook g1 earlier. Now you have some kind of counterattack ideas coming from white here. Queen d4 was played. I'll look at other variations after. So queen d4 was played with this idea of protecting g6. He allows rook takes b7, and this is Rapport's idea. He plays rook f takes f3 check, and gives up the rooks in exchange for the queen. So queen takes f3, queen a1 check, rook b1, and now rook takes f3, king e2, queen c3, and there's the second rook. Queen takes c4, king e3, and queen d5. So this was Rapport's idea, is to get the pawns and the queen for the pair of rooks. So this is a very double-edged looking situation, because White's king is open, like wide open in the middle of the board, literally. But he has 3 pieces for the queen, but Black has 3 extra pawns. But in reality, is Black going to be able to push those pawns without endangering his own king? So very, very imbalanced position. Rook b8 check, king f7, knight g5. And unfortunately for Rapport, White's able to develop initiative here. Knight e4, queen d4, and now king f4. So now Black is running out of checks. King e6, rook g5, h6, rook g6 check, king f7, rook d6. Queen takes a4, and now just king f5, and Rapport actually resigned here. Reason why is because after king f5, there's really nothing Black can do here. Say after g6, king f4. The idea is like kind of the trick White. So for instance, rook takes g6, then queen d7. Although White is still better, but stronger is just king f4, because all the threats remain. Rook f6, drive the king back, and then rook g6, and then it's going to be mate soon, as you can see. Queen's forced back, again, threatening mate again. And then that's all she wrote, because now you're threatening the queen and mate. Of course, you will have to just do that, and of course, there's no reason to talk about that. So Rapport resigned after king f5. I would like to go back to where I felt he could have improved, and that's on this move right here, rook e3. I mean, the position is very complicated. Rook e3 actually wasn't a bad move per se, but after rook f6, rook b1, queen h4, and the idea that I found here was that the queen could come to h3, and after the rook comes to g6, and the idea is basically to try to mate Black on g2. So for instance, h3 of course would be played to prevent that, but if h3 is not played, then you have this idea, and you can see after king f2, the queen would just slide in. So this is why h3 would have to be played, and then let's say queen g3, trying to infiltrate the position, and that's just going to lead to a draw by perpetual. Okay, so at least Black is safe there. Rook g6, again, it's the penetration here, and this is going to lead to a draw again by perpetual. So either rook f5 or rook f6 are good alternatives. Anyway, rook e3 had been played, and rook g1, and now queen takes h2. Rook g2 and queen h4. All right, rook b1, and now what I believe was the mistake, like a bigger mistake, was queen d4, and going into this combination with where he gives up the two rooks for the game White's queen and the 2 pawns. Safer is to play rook f8 here. Then maybe play could go knight f4, and then g6, right, warding off the threat against g7. And again, you had this scenario where they have perpetual check. So it seemed like that's the best way to go for Black, is to go for a perpetual in this line. And I'm sure, you know, the play was very accurate in this game, like from both sides. I know they're strong grandmasters, but Wow. I mean, it's almost like two engines were playing each other, and then Rapport slipped up and maybe like forgot something. Um, because I think most players would have folded under Black's attack here. But Bukavshin, was a very talented young grandmaster, and it's unfortunate, that he's no longer, with us. But I just wanted to show that game because I just felt it was very, very entertaining and interesting game, and I hope you like that video, and I hope you learned something from there. Um, Again, if you're interested in the Chigorins, check the links below. Like I said, I posted that book also there if you're interested. And again, hit that thumbs up button. Remember, Chess Audiobooks is on Chess, chess.com, and also on Instagram and Twitter. So, feel free to hit me up 5 times. I'd love to play you in the game. But yeah, get in those comments below and tell me if you know anything about this particular chess player, and situation, and let me know your thoughts. So I'll see you guys soon on the next video.